Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay.
สวัสดีค่ะ Kesinee วัฒนวิรชัยนะคะ I'm the General Manager from JI Group from Thailand, and today we have 4 guests from all around the world. The first one is Sean Watson from Melbourne, Australia. The second one is Bill Hackney from Australia, Melbourne as well. The third one will be Aaron Belbasis, which is coming from Dubai, which is very early in the morning for him. And the last one, we get Dr. Amarnath Chegu from India to join us on the session today. Today, we will talk about digital transformation. So we will be sharing a lot of information. Hope you will enjoy the sessions. I will pass to you, Sean Watson. Hello, Sean.
Okay, see.
All right, I think you can start your session on digital transformation, and I guess it's regarding the digital building permitting and also the approval today. I will pass the screen to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just let me know if you can see the presentation okay, please.
Yes, I can see it clearly, but still not the main screen.
Okay, sorry.
I'm seeing your control screen at the moment.
Yeah, Sean, if you just did the drop down on swap presenting screen, it should flip it.
Just, yeah, say that again, please, Will.
Pop into presentation mode.
Yeah.
And then on the other screen, you should have, where you've got notes and things, you should have a drop down.
Not finding that here. Just a second. So I'll stop sharing this. Yep, I think we're good to go now.
Okay, I think, yes, it's coming. Thank you, Sean.
So yeah, sorry about that. Thanks for the help there, Will. It's always good when you've got a team support. So yeah, I'm actually based in Dubai, and part of my role at Aurecon is involving BIM advisory services. So I would like to present some ideas that we were involved in the municipality's attempt to introduce BIM into the government advisory services. So this is basically some thoughts and ideas around how we can implement a digital building permit application. And so what are the drivers for a smart digital building permit? We're aiming towards smart city planning, which involves autonomous and automated checking process. We're looking to improve the government operations by making them more intelligent and to promote an open data for public information. Our objective by trying to achieve a digital building permit is to reduce the number of documents required in the application. So currently, there's a number of documents required in terms of planning application submittals and what are the actual documents that need to be submitted. So we looked at the overall number, and we looked at a way that we could potentially reduce those. Across those documentations, a lot of the information on them is duplicated. So you would be inputting same information more than once. Of course, when we propose a new system, it has to be cost effective and efficient. And we want to minimize the impact to existing practices. Also, a big objective was to implement the ability for predefined checking against basic rules, and hopefully give a bit more clarity on all these objectives as we move through the presentation. So just to give you an overall idea of the roadmap we took to looking at defining a digital building permit was, first of all, we had to define the municipality information requirements. Then we would take those information requirements and apply a building data structure. Once we had the data structure, we could then create a building data model. And from our data model, we would then extract the building data. Once the data is extracted, we would then validate it, and the validated information would then be integrated into the permitting system. Once we have the information in the permitting system, we can finally populate what we refer to as the building card. So it's the final card that's basically an approval of the building by the municipality. It outlines the building usage and the building type, that type of thing. You may have something similar in Thailand. I'm not 100% sure. But this is particular to the Dubai region. So when we talk about defining information requirements, we have to really, our thoughts have to go towards what are the level of information that we can expect to receive within a planning application for us to extract that level of information. And the recommended stage for submitting a planning application is, according to the REBA plan of work, we do across the industry, there are different methodologies followed, but this is quite an industry standard. We would normally receive a planning application at spatial coordination stage. So the information that we could expect to rely on within that data set is essentially that the spatial objects or areas are all coordinated and finalized correctly. Okay. Beyond that technical design, it would be difficult for us to rely on the information we receive at the recommended plan and application stage. Okay. So what are the municipality information requirements? As you can see here, I myself, not very rehearsed in Arabic, but we have the English translation on the left-hand side. And these are the types of property title, land use proposed. This is the types of information that is populated onto, at the minute, this is in a 2D CAD environment, okay? So these are the types of information a consultant would have to populate on a CAD drawing. And then once it comes to the actual permitting system itself, they would then duplicate manually the information, such as floor information, on the current building permitting system. So they're creating CAD drawings with 2D layouts, floor plans. From those floor plans, they can then take the floor areas and then populate it into the building system. So we were just defining at this stage because it wasn't clear what the municipality information requirements actually were. And you can see here, this is an example of CAD extract and an existing permitting application on the system, and there's a discrepancy between the total floor areas, which is quite common. So again, by manually entering the information, we cannot rely on the information we receive. So I'm sure we've all seen this. It's pretty old graphic now, but it's important to iterate that, you know, the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data or information. Okay, information is starting to be perceived to have a bigger value now. So in order for us to start thinking about extracting data in an automated way, we needed to apply a data structure. In this case, we looked at applying something in line with ISO 19650. So there is a recommendation that a classification is applied to your information, and it's purely a recommendation, okay? So again, we wanted to iterate, really reiterate the need for classification and the fact that we're dealing with complex information that we need to refer to, we need to be able to access at any time, and it needs to be done in a consistent way. We looked at applying a classification system. Just to give you a basic example, there's many classification systems applied in different contexts, but here we have an example of a library system. It's very simple. It's called the Dewey Decimal System. It's how books are categorized in the library, and it's been around since 1876. So, and it's still used today. It undergoes some changes and updates, but it's pretty much still in use today as it was formed quite some time ago. So it's nothing new. And again, if you think about the simplest way to think about classification is probably Lego blocks. Each Lego block has a number and can be found on a specific catalog. Okay, and there's a link there if you want to go and have a look at those. But yeah, that's probably the best way to think of our designs, is to think about physical Lego building blocks, and each of those blocks is, has a unique identification to determine its shape, its color, and you can, let's say if you have you're looking for that particular block, you can go online and take it directly from the catalog. So yeah, there are many classification systems that have been created and applied in different formats. Just to give you an example, currently today we have in different regions, we have, for example, Uniclass in the UK, Omniclass, Master Format, and Uni Format are used in North America, and then in some areas in Northern Europe, we have some other classification systems that I've noted there. But it's important to, I guess what we're trying to reflect here is there isn't a single building classification system currently. So we looked at which classification system would suit the activity that we're trying to achieve, and we looked at applying Uniclass. So what is Uniclass? It's a system that identifies buildings, whether they're part of landscaping, infrastructure can also be identified under a single classification scheme. It's basically a hierarchy suite of tables. So, and it's flexible enough to accommodate future requirements. So the company maintaining Uniclass is the NBS, and they're continually updating and releasing the new updates. So it's held and managed by the NBS. It's compliant with ISO 12206 Part 2. which again conforms to the ISO 19650 standard. And it's also a database of, let's say, general terminology that can be applied across many regions. Just to give you an example, the hierarchy would go a little something like this. So at the top, we would have a complex. You can see an example here. This is a holiday village. We would refer to that as a complex. Within that complex, we have entities. An example of an entity shown here would be a restaurant. And within that entity, we would have spaces. Within the restaurant, we would have a toilet. So that's the hierarchical simplified form of how the data structure works. So I've simplified it very much there, but it probably gives you an overall idea of how the data structure can relate in a hierarchical form. So if we look at Uniclass, how can we apply it in our documentation? We take a simple example here of a villa. We've classified the space information. So a guest bedroom is a particular classification for lounge. Again, another classification, living room, for example, a separate classification. So that allows us, by using a classification format, to identify the main usages of each of the spaces of this particular entity. Okay. And I wanted to show you a video, basically how the MDS have taken classification and expanded it, not just into simple spatial areas, but also identifying many other building objects. I think this video is probably the best way to explain it, demonstrate it. Okay, so yeah, it really, what I wanted to do there was, although we're looking at basic spatial information, when you apply classification, you can expand it and really enhance the data within your models or your design information. Okay, and you can see here, we just wanted to demonstrate an overall workflow in terms of how we can reduce the time spent in a permitting application. So at the top, we've got the existing process. where there are a number of steps of filling in information that really exhaust the process that we believe that we can reduce just by introducing a smarter way of adding data to your design information and then utilizing an automated extraction process. Okay, and rather than go through every one, I'm happy to share this presentation after if people are more interested in understanding a bit more about how we can improve the current process. And this is just an overall idea of how the new process would work. So we would, the consultant would begin the process by assigning what type of land usage they have, whether it's empty or occupied. The model would contain that as per the classification system. We would then extract the project information from the model. It would update the project profile. On the consultant side of the application, once they're happy with the project information, they would upload the model. We would carry out a number of e-checking processes, such as are the minimum area requirements met? We can check the plot boundary if it's within the agreed boundary. And after that e-checking process, we would then generate the building cards. And obviously the consultant could then review, complete the application, and we could issue the permit. Okay, so that's a overall basic idea of how we could smarten up the system, I guess. So like I touched upon briefly, we would look to implement an e-checking. That would come directly from the model. So there would be one model per building. We would verify the standards. Each of the classified building objects would be extracted in XML. The building card would read the XML and retrieve the mapping from the database to populate the building card. So we would understand what are the space usages, and from the classification system, we could retrieve exactly those requirements. We could then validate the drawings against the configured checklist, and then we could generate the building cards and give a result on the e-checking. Okay, so whether the minimum spatial areas are met, we can then give the feedback to the consultant, and they can review their design and resubmit accordingly. So in summary, what are we trying to achieve by having a digital building permit and to avoid the 2D CAD manual input? We're trying to achieve a single data entry for building information, so avoid duplicate data entry. The information can be held in a multiple of file containers, so that can be a drawing, it can be a model, and it can be a multiple of. I think importantly, most importantly, we're introducing a common language. So we're not having our own interpretation of what each space is. We can have a common understanding and a way of accurately defining those. The information that we extract when we automate it is also accurate, and we can integrate some basic defined rules and regulations for checking. I think when you have a digital building permit, it's more aligned to a collaborative working environment. And also by introducing this method, we believe that it's a somewhat medium uptake in terms of what the consultants have to do. So there's minimal disruption to their existing methods and procedures. We would simply be asking for additional information than what is provided now. And I think the overall there is the potential for them to be happy with that requirement because of the time that's reduced in submitting the application and the automated process for checking some predefined rules. Okay, so it was I think it was quite technical there, so I'm happy to take any questions, and it was also quite an overview, so I'm happy to go into any detail of any sections that people are interested in. But I think that's enough for me on the digital building permit.
Okay, thank you so much, Sean. I actually having a few questions here, but I will keep it for the last.
Okay.
Just to let all the audience know that please feel free to send your questions in. It can be in Thai and also in English. สำหรับท่านผู้ชมทางบ้านนะคะถ้าใครสนใจที่จะส่งคำถามเข้ามาสามารถส่งมาได้เลยนะคะเป็นภาษาไทยก็ได้ค่ะเดี๋ยวทางเราจะช่วยถามคำถามกับคุณชอนและท่านอื่นๆให้เองนะคะขอบคุณมากค่ะ All right, so we will move on to the second topic of today. It's the digital enablement. We related to ISO 19650 that I think everyone in Thailand is talking about that in the moment. And I think the implementation of it will be very interesting. We'll pass that to Will Hackney. Thank you.
Thank you. All good. Hello all and welcome. So I'm Will Hackney, having led the standardization of digital delivery for infrastructure across Aurecon. I now lead our digital enablement capability in assisting asset owner operators to procure and leverage information and data to enhance both business and built environment outcomes. Today, I'm looking forward to sharing some insights in relation to how digital information models are transforming built infrastructure and the businesses that support them. So there are many words describing how digital information and data can be managed and utilized to inform decisions, enhance reporting, and bring new insights to our built assets. But I'm urging you all not to worry about how we label this and to focus more on some of the key foundations which enable you to build the required capability. I'll be talking about information modeling and information management, standardization, and collaborative working. First, I'd like to start by providing some highlights from some recent industry research we've led here at Aurecon. So earlier this year, Aurecon conducted research with business leaders and futurists from across the globe, looking into the issues and opportunities around digitization and highlighting the possibilities created by digital ways of working now and into the future. So, what did we uncover in relation to the importance of leadership in the digital space? Well, organizations are struggling. They're grappling with the complexities, with 9 out of 10 businesses telling us they've faced some sort of challenge in embracing digital. And this is largely due to decision makers lacking understanding and a need to show immediate return on investment and cost, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. Now a quick look at the Digital Horizon insights as part of our Digital Futures research. The research also told us the majority of survey respondents do not feel their organizations are prepared to thrive. In fact, more than 1 in 2 respondents believe their organization is at best only somewhat capable of thriving. Our findings reinforce the need for C-suite leaders, executive leadership teams to own and drive digital strategies for optimal results. As we know, there's opportunities to connect strategy, performance, revenue, and return on investment are much clearer in organizations with the relevant business processes and the process owners identified. So now just a very quick look at the final chapter of our Digital Futures research, and that's into your digital decisions. So in terms of actually implementing a digital strategy in relation to physical assets, organisations are struggling and decision makers are lacking understanding of the challenges and the opportunities, which is a major contributing factor. And the definition of digital, which I touched on briefly ago in terms of different terminology, is quite narrow and not shared across their own organisations, typically with responsibility siloed and not owned at a leadership level. So these are some of the challenges that we look to line up and assist our clients with. The now mindset's also prevalent, and organisations are missing opportunities to move ahead on the digital curve. So making sure that there's an eye on the future and what happens next in the changes you're making in your own businesses. The majority of survey respondents do not feel their organisations are prepared to thrive, with many moving straight to implementation without thorough discussion and planning in place. So engaging collaboratively within your own businesses to build a plan is essential. Now, I just wanted to share another form of research that we conducted last year. We also looked at the future trends in terms of what particularly Australians really want from the future of transport. So I just wanted to share that as another key trend we're seeing. As you can see, amongst more than 1,300 people having been asked to set their minds to 2035, the most significant priority was in relation to convenience. One of the key findings was the need to balance the demand for convenience with a better outcome for the environment. A digitally enabled built environment would certainly go a long way to managing that balance through design, construction, and into operations. So what does this all mean for our industry? We can see that there are many macro large challenges facing the industry of tomorrow, but also some more immediate challenges in relation to transforming businesses and the workforce that make up our industry. So now I just want to talk about information modelling and information management. So information modelling represents a huge part of what the supply chain, the workforce undergoes every day. And you would have seen and heard of many examples at this conference. But this needs to be underpinned by good information and data management, more importantly. Now, the Sustainable Built Environment National Research Centre here in Australia, Research Project 2.5, was led by myself as industry leader, alongside many industry partners, including government, academia. And this highlighted the importance of establishing a robust asset information model by managing requirements and delivery of asset-related information and data. And as you just heard from Sean, what that entails in terms of classification, structuring data about built assets is very, very relevant and important. But there are many challenges that still exist in relation to managing the ebb and flow and ultimately the reconciliation of information between various projects and stakeholders. So as you can see with the diagram here, that notion of you may have lots of projects of different scale and complexity generating new information that ultimately needs to be aligned with and connect back into the broader information and data for your existing assets. So that's a real challenge that working with clients. The more standardized approach you can take in the way you create and leverage information and data, the better chance you have of lining that up across the life cycle. So information management can be broken down into some fundamental activities to make it more real. Now, at Aurecon, we use this simple framework with our project teams and when advising our clients. Now, of course, the production of information then expands into a whole range of a vast range of activities relating to gathering, generating, analysing and communicating with design, construction intent and operational intent. This is often the main focus of industry when a balance should be struck between the production and the use of information over the way it is governed and managed. So getting that balance between, I guess, the management of information and data and the creation and leveraging of it. So at Aurecon, we recognise the importance of having a standardised and well-managed approach to such activities. So please take a moment to enjoy this short video to highlight some of those examples. So we also recognise the need to develop enabling technologies to assist our staff in delivering projects and client outcomes. Unsigned Studio is part of the Aurecon group, and through the work they provide to clients, demonstrate both the impact and value that storytelling and great communication can have. And they assisted in much of the work you just saw in the video there. So now moving on to standardization. So let's take a look at standardization as a key enabler, another key enabler. So all businesses have the challenge of connecting their various departments and business drivers, which becomes particularly challenging when faced with engaging with a broad and complex supply chain in the industries that we operate in. And one of the biggest challenges is breaking down silos and creating a community of leadership and practice across and within your own businesses. Now, further insights from recent Sustainable Built Environment National Research Centre research with Aurecon identified 3 key areas that would benefit from improved standardisation. Now, these include defining asset information requirements with clear ownership of those requirements, also consistently collecting asset lifecycle information and maintaining it, and then finally, the ability to consistently transfer asset information between parties and across the asset lifecycle. So a key milestone for industry recently was the publication of ISO 9650, Sean previously mentioned. And this is effectively an international view of what good looks like for managing asset-related information. When I say managing asset-related information, again, think of that framework I spoke about previously around planning, procuring, production, control and exchange of information. Now it's founded, ISO 9650 is founded on the UK BIM Level 2 framework and now covers the whole of asset lifecycle, as well as introducing a security-minded approach to asset information and built assets. One of the current challenges is how industry can realise both an open and collaborative approach whilst maintaining a security-minded approach. So as another key challenge for asset owner operators that we're helping navigate through. So if you haven't read ISO 9650, you might wonder what's in the box. Well, it's obviously all about information management for built assets. And some key areas to focus on include the definition of information that's required, the planning of information before it's actually produced or procured, and the phased delivery and exchange of asset information, which could actually represent quite a step change internationally around the controlled and consistent exchange back and forth between asset owner and their supply chains. And these activities occur across the asset lifecycle with a continuing focus on the transition between projects and into operations. So again, a lot of these challenges reside in getting that consistent and controlled and iterative exchange of physical built assets and a digital version of those assets from projects into operations and maintenance. Encompassing geometric data, non-geometric asset data, and documentation, BIM is really about a verb. It's about building of information models in a purposeful and collaborative way. Now, in August 2019, I led the business to become certified to ISO 9650. Now, many tier 1 suppliers have or are also seeking ISO 19650 certification. And even RTA in the Middle East have gained certification as an asset owner operator recently to send a real signal for the level of international quality and consistency that clients are really looking to expect and contribute to as they have a key role in this information management framework. And I just wanted to share a bit of the story behind that, in terms of why and how we got there. So how did we get there? By first having a clear digital strategy for our business and clear leadership around that digital strategy and implementing and building capability. You can see in the photo here, our Chief Digital Officer in this photo. And this photo was taken in our office in Brisbane, in Queensland. And it's of the attendees for the annual Digital Exemplar Forum. And this runs every year to connect, capture, and recognise what great looks like from across our own business in the digital delivery space. By supporting and growing the necessary capability with events like these and knowledge management exercises across the business, and also ensuring we were early movers, having implemented and put in key elements in place many years previously. So I'll talk to a few of those. So one of the key elements to achieving certification was we engaged our quality team front and center from the start, and established our own internal auditing program for ISO 9650 compliance. We developed a suite of enablers for the business and projects to implement consistently and in line with our approach and interpretation course of ISO 9650. And that's something that clients really look to take on board, is to understand what it means to them and their businesses and their asset portfolios, which is very different to being a designer or constructor in the supply chain. We also ensured there was direct support and e-learning available to all of our staff, support them in their day-to-day business and ensuring their work was aligned to ISO 9650 principles. So I'm really proud to have had the opportunity to lead Aurecon's ISO 9650 certification, and actually for us to become amongst the world's first to get certification, backed by our years of capability and business readiness planning. So this leads me to reflect on the practical trends relating to information production and management across the asset lifecycle, which I'd like to share with you now. So having worked for a main contractor, a transport owner operator, and now an engineering consultancy, one key trend I've recognized over the years is the need and the value and importance of collaborative working. Some further research with SPNRC, a lot of research on relatancy there. I've been involved for 3 years chairing their utilisation committee. It also highlighted 3 key drivers for collaborative working to help improve and further leverage asset information and data. So this includes involvement and clarity at all levels, ensuring there's connectivity across the asset lifecycle, so particularly between projects and into operations and maintenance, and actually taking small steps within your own businesses and with your partners and suppliers to assist uptake and transition. So small steps are more sustainable, leave a positive legacy there. Now, achieving a consistent approach to leveraging asset information through collaborative working, asset owner operators can begin to realise improved outcomes in the operation and investment across their asset portfolios and networks. So that's really wide for most asset owner operators. But the challenge still remains around enabling your direct and indirect workforce to work digitally and in a consistent manner. And with a lot of focus, of course, in the capital delivery of projects and perhaps an over-eagerness to try new things in some scenarios, we really need to build stronger foundations across the asset lifecycle to promote a more unified and repeatable approach to asset information management. So again, that collaborative working piece across the asset lifecycle. Now, of course, not a lot really happens without people at the forefront and at the centre, which is why industry also needs to take a fresh look at what actually impact they have and make as teams and as individuals, particularly upon the information and decisions that are being made day to day from a business and a project and an asset management perspective. So here we take a look at visualising the interaction and relationship between people and the information created across projects. Here you can see a project for a certain discipline from an individual's perspective. Then we see the other projects they have worked on, and this is being drawn down from a database across many projects. Now, we can also take a look at those of a similar role on that particular project that have actually relied on the information created by that individual. So this really starts to tell the individual's contribution and story around information and data. And clearly much of the workforce do not perhaps appreciate the real impact they make and contribute in terms of the information they create and in terms of the information that others rely on. So we're finding that the human and personal perspective of information, data, and the footprint that people make day to day is really important in that change and capability space. So let's end by talking about the 3 C's being challenge, configure, and clarity. Digitalization of your own businesses is about challenging current ways of working. Organizations that are asking the right questions and configuring themselves properly to look outwardly as well as internally with their own businesses are the business of making significant headway. Those reaping the benefits also have clear shared understanding of what digital information and data means and clarity around the ownership of it within their organizations, both the processes that support that and data and information itself. There is cultural change, bridging of skills gap, and importantly, they are looking into the future to create opportunities for new revenue and better social and economic outcomes. Organizations that are ahead on the digital curve have moved past the hype around things like big data and enabling technologies, and they realize the importance of finding the right information and data to understand the process of it, to get it, how to manage it, and how to leverage it to support their business activities. They're clear on their goals and are using data to develop actionable insights to inform priorities for their organization and to enable decisions to improve both operational performance and potentially create new market opportunities. I'd just like to end with a quote from a sci-fi science fiction author to remind us why we must work together to design a better future by saying the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I think we have even a lot more questions, but I think we will move on to the next sessions because we're running a little bit late. So the next one will be passing to Aaron on digital future technology vectors. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for joining. My name's Aaron Belbasis, and I am the Future Technology Leader within the Digital Futures team at Aurecon. And as you can see from both Will and Sean, Aurecon spends a lot of time focusing on making sure that the data management and the management of how we deliver digital transformation is very much organized and standardized. And one of the reasons, one of the paired things we do with this is we actually look into the future landscape that the industry and all our broader projects are actually heading towards. And there's one of the things we help with is we look at how do we best identify, assess, and select technology that's coming through this landscape over the numerous years that we're approaching. How do we understand what the impact of these emerging technologies are to both our clients and the broader industry? And then with those two in mind, how do we plan and strategically navigate through the uncertainty of different technology opportunities and different situations, which we're not fully aware of what the technology implications are, but how do we best plan for that? And so one of the best ways anywhere to navigate is to start with a map. So to navigate any landscape, a map makes it really handy to understand what's going on. And with a map, it's generally got a couple of features. So one of the first features we look at in Aurecon is we understand that technology in itself is always evolving. Technology starts in its infancy, it grows up in momentum, and it matures over a period of time to the point where we maximize its use, and it eventually moves on to a legacy state. But we understand that technology isn't just available to us or our company or our industry. Technology generally is available globally to everyone. So we need to measure how that technology is actually ranked. And so we start with a basic scale. Here's a scale that we've taken from Simon Wardley, who looks at the evolution of a technology. And we say that all technology starts at some point in a state of genesis. It's usually created in a garage or in a lab or in someone's on the back of a napkin. It's rarely and poorly understood, but eventually it matures. It becomes a custom-built solution where the market is growing with it. People start to use it more and more, but it's not really fully a product yet, or it still has issues. Then it moves into a product stage, which is something we're more comfortable with saying. You can buy it directly from a supplier or distributor. It's available off the shelf. And lastly, it finishes in a state of commodity or commoditization, where it's something like Amazon's AWS system, where it's basically a credit card charge and it happens month on month. So that gives us one aspect of understanding our landscape. The second one we want to look at is we understand that not only does technology evolve, but also our use of technology changes. There's a different application rate. So there's the technology that we use now. There's the technology that we understand we're beginning to scale in an emerging sense, and it's what's the next generation of technology we'll be using. And then there's the future technology, the distant horizon, where this technology is one that we're aware of, but we're not ready to use just yet. And so to model this, we look at the 3 horizon model, and we understand in horizon 1, very much this is where we're optimizing our current practices. This is technology that's available to us in our industry now. There's horizon 2, where we look at the emerging and the scaling opportunities that we have for future growth of our industry. And thirdly, we have horizon 3, which is very much the next generation of what our industry will be, what the technology will be that we'll be adopting into the far future. And so technology moves from those horizons, and we get increasing application as it moves to the horizon 1. So when we bring these 2 scales together, we can actually build our map, and we can say, on the left, we have our horizons, and on the right, we have our technology evolution, which allows us to look at a range of technologies on this landscape and actually look at if I want to move or if a technology is transitioning from a distant horizon to our horizon 1 and evolving, those 2 components of both evolution and application give me a direction or a vector, which we call the technology vector. It's basically the path that a technology has taken or will take into the future. And then we can start to understand how these technologies are performing and better understand our landscape. So the idea is we call this a delta map. We look at what is the change between a current state that we're in and another industry, or a current state now and a future state that we want, and how do we close that gap, that delta? So what we did is as part of our futures research, we looked at 120 key technologies across the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, just to better understand what are technologies we have now, and what are the technologies that are coming to us in the future, and how do we start to plan and strategically understand which ones we should work on, which ones we definitely should be using now, which ones should we look at the next wave of acquisition and investment, and what are the ones that actually we shouldn't be wasting investment dollars yet on, but we should be paying attention to and waiting until they're a little bit more mature and ready for us. So rather than going into all the detail here, we've published a great 57-page report that's available to anyone that follows the link that the conference organizers have and or goes to our website, which breaks down those 120 technologies into 6 key areas or clusters, and has sort of a 6-page spread on actually explaining what the technologies are and where they're placed given our current landscape. So I'd encourage anyone that wants to see those, please access that link. So once we have a map, maps are very handy in telling us where things are, but they also tell us who is on the map and where they're located. Here's a great picture of the Melbourne Zoo. If I want to find out where the animals are on a particular map, I can locate them and know where they are. So the same happens with our map. We understand that products and solutions that are actually low in evolution, they're just being created or in the distant future, that's where we find researchers. We know that researchers are working on this technology and trying to commercialize that technology. We know that startups tend to work on very much the technology we have available in our Horizon 1, or the ones we can use right now, but also it's very early stage. We can look at partners who are looking at mature products that they're using in their industry quite well, but we haven't yet moved to use in ours very heavily. And lastly, the one we're most commonly aware of is the traditional suppliers and vendors, the technology that we can buy from our current understood industry suppliers. Now, because most of us actually focus down here on this quadrant, that's where we see a lot of high competition. These are the technologies that we're very aware of, but everyone else in our industry, all our competitors or our clients and other projects, this is kind of the expected technologies that are being used. Now, it's great to focus here, but it's also important to look into the blue areas. the area where there's also low competition, but there's a lot of advantage to change the way our industry is going. And that's how we actually implement digital transformation. So the question is, where should we focus? Where should we look now as people within our industry wanting to see the best digital transformation that's possible? So if we return to the 120 technologies here, we can see, and I've colored them here for ease of visualization, we can see some main clusters that we can focus on. First, we can focus on the business as usual opportunities, the technology that we can buy right now. There is no reason we cannot access them, apart from maybe your own internal finance restrictions, but these are technologies that are available to us within our industry, and they're ready for us to use directly. These are the kind of technologies like cybersecurity. As we move more into a digital transformation, cybersecurity becomes a main component of what we need to focus on. We know that we have mobile devices now that can go on site and capture information. We shouldn't be using pen and paper anymore. These systems are technology, it's a form of technology that allows us to expedite our digital transformation. BIM, which is very heavily talked about in this conference, is a unification and standardization of this information in our current business as usual sense. And lastly, we can look at other things like prefab and modular construction, which we know if we shift to a new way of working, we can actually expedite the period or shorten the period of some of our construction projects. So we can now move on to the next segment. As we look into the next horizon, we're still looking at products that are available to us now. And this blue area is the next generation of opportunities. These are technologies that they're actually available off the shelf or very near ready for us to buy directly. But for some reason, we just haven't, or we haven't been ready as an industry to adopt them. And these are the ones we really want to focus on in our Horizon 2, in our Horizon 2 investment and strategic moves. This is where we look at very much things like UAV data capture, so the use of drones, where we're not just using cameras, but we can use thermal, near infrared, we can use radiation sensors or different kind of sensors on drones to capture information critical to our sites. We can look at digital twins, the consolidation of modeling and information into a unified model so that we can simulate what's happening on our real life projects, where things like industrial IoT becomes critical. The idea to have real-time information from our projects feeding a digital model. And as we start to bring more digital transformation into design processes, we can do solutions like computational engineering, where what we're doing is we're creating 100 different variants of a project. And at the same time, it would take us to design one, but we can tailor a project to be optimized to a given goal. It can be the cheapest, the fastest to construct, the most environmentally friendly, or the one that's going to win the most amount of awards. And lastly, we can start to see there's a lot of machine learning and AI coming into everything that we do. And technology like object recognition for video footage and actually feeding that in for site vision and other things is something we're very much seeing now coming very close to our Horizon 1 business as usual solutions. Then we look at another area, which is a little slice of the map, which represents where we can actually focus on collaboration and partnership. These are technologies that are not yet ready for an organization who's a little bit risk adverse at moving too much into early stage technology, but really is thinking ahead, very much forward planning and understanding that if I can control these technologies, I'll have a great competitive advantage in the future. So two great examples of this is autonomous vehicles, semi-autonomous vehicles at a level 4, and large-scale 3D printing. So it's important for organizations in the industry to start thinking about other technology from other industries. And autonomous vehicles is a good example of that. So we know that whilst they're not directly on our roads now, within the next decade, we're going to see more and more autonomous vehicles driving around. That means that the bridges, the tunnels, the buildings that we're building now and the roads are going to last 50 years. So within the span of our projects, we're going to have to incorporate the use of this technology. So rather than moving in and actually becoming the masters of this technology, This is where we look to partner with industry partners and collaborators and work with them to better integrate a technology into the precincts and the developments we're doing now becomes future ready. We can also look at the 3D printing of concrete. So technology that started as a desktop plastic extrusion system has now moved up to large-scale construction solutions. And whilst it's not yet as we can see here, it's a middle-of-the-road custom-built technology, very soon it will be part of what we do as an industry. We'll start to move with that prefab and modular construction. There'll be a larger construction element of large-scale 3D printing. And whilst we don't need to invest too much capital into that now, we want to better understand how this is going to disrupt or better still complement our working methods. And lastly, we look at the finals area of the map. This is the area where the technology is either too low in evolution in the genesis stage or sits in a horizon 3 and too far into our distant future, which doesn't mean that we ignore it. It's best for us now to understand that we want to pay attention to what it will do to our industry into that future. So we know things like the much hyped urban air mobility or flying car services that are coming are still quite distant away. But the same thing, if we're building a building or we're constructing a building that potentially will have an urban air mobility vehicle land on the top, we also want to consider the fact that do we need to have an elevator that goes to the roof rather than the top floor? One of the interesting things we can look at is telepresence robotics. Now it's interesting here, this is very much a product that you can buy and we've been able to buy for the last decade. But within our industry, we saw no need for telepresence robotics. It was something that happened in academia, in business settings, even in medicine. But in the construction and engineering world, it wasn't very critical. Up until the point where a global pandemic hit and we were restricted from going to site. And suddenly we have an opportunity to see a technology that allows us to go and virtually inspect a site and collaborate globally from anywhere in the world and inspect and look at our assets, collect data that we need within the confines and the restrictions of a global pandemic. And this is one of the important reasons why we want to maintain a watchful eye and have these technologies on our radar. So 120 technologies have been looked at here, and I encourage everyone to look at the report. And I'll just touch on some final strategic concepts to look at. Everything in our bottom right, we want to focus on the solutions that target our immediate business needs and current business solutions. We can look at technologies that are early stage within our industry, which you can apply to projects right now. We can look at technologies in this bottom right that have become legacy, they've become old, and look at where we can replace them with the next generation of technology. We can look at the same kind of technologies in our Horizon 2, which are actually ready to be applied now. And all we need to do is buy them or learn to adopt them. We don't need to mature them, they're ready for use. We can look at other industries where we can find technologies like telepresence robotics or drones and apply them in our industry to make the digital transformation journey for us faster. And lastly, where are there technologies that are starting to become closer and mature, and within the confines of your within the interest of your business, you can start investing strategically to build a competitive advantage. Thank you. I'll finish up here.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I think that you're giving us a lot into the future, and surely, I think we all have a joke that who is actually the main person who drives digital transformation in our organization. And this year, we said that it's because of COVID-19 that actually giving us a good digital transformation. That's why in Thailand at the moment, we are talking about that as well. And I think we will come to a lot of questions about that because of what should be a purpose and the objective to do digital digital transformation and what to do with the policy and the management in Thailand as well. All right, let's move to the next session. Actually, it's the last session that will be Dr. Amarnath, who will talk about digital transformation in India. I think that will be a really good example for all of us in Thailand as well. Thank you. Pass it to you.
Yeah, thank you. Just sharing the slides. Okay. I'd like to thank the BCT team and the Impact team, and especially the Thailand BIM Association for inviting for this session. And I can see the speaker sessions, like the first 3 speakers. The sessions are very much nice, and especially the previous presentation given was really interesting about the kind of digital transformation happening in different sectors and how that can be implemented for our AEC sector. In fact, I would be happy to get the presentation slides from the speakers though. This is Dr. Amarnath. I'm currently heading as a president for the Indian BIM Association, and also supporting our contractor, one of the major contractor in India. It's called Larsen & Toubro Construction. I'm heading the BIM strategies for the company in terms of going way forward for digital transformation journey and looking into the skill developments and certifications. And this is the email and the WhatsApp. Anyone like to connect? Yeah, you're welcome for that. So some of the topics maybe has been clearly briefed by the previous speakers. I may not go deeper into those topics. When we say about BIM, it's building the information into the model. That's all about the data management. So how do you manage the data across the life cycle of the projects? That's the key thing comes into picture. And the rest of the efforts from the people using the technologies all will be aligned. But how you manage this data and the people who need the data at the right time, will they be getting that? No, it's all about project information data management. So when we say about BIM, when you say the project, it's a timeline. So you start planning the projects and then the conceptual model, then the definition, then the design, then the build and commission, then you're handing over the projects and then the operations. And during this phase, you have 3 categories of items, which is graphical, which is about the level of visualization, non-graphical, which is about the parameters of about each materials, and the documentation in terms of installations or documentation, whatever. So all this data keeps on increasing day by day from the stage 0 to stage 7. And the number of people getting involved for adding the data and using the data keeps on increasing. And it becomes a little bit challenging when you don't get the right data at the right point of time. The RFIs gets more and the project get delayed, and people may not have on the same platform to understand, are we on the right track? So that's the key reason where the BIM comes into picture when compared to the traditional approach. And when BIM is coming, there are different other new things coming in, how it can use it for design phase, what are the benefits it can get for the construction phase and the operation phase and demolition, recycle, and the overall project management perspective. That's where the latest technologies, equipments, and new skills and competencies and new methodologies comes into picture, and also standardized way of implementing projects comes into picture. And we all know the concept of LOD. I don't want to go deeper into that, but different countries had different terminologies. Some people say level of information, level of detail, level of information development, level of development, level of accuracy, information accuracy levels, different way of defining. It's all about to what level the data is maturing. And as you can see here, from the stage 1, it's like LOD 100, where the client consultant discuss about the projects and get the information, and then do the basic conceptual model, and then do the work in progress model with LOD 200, and then design intent model, and then the construction model, the fabrication model comes to the construction, and then the handover, and then the maintenance. And even with respect to the object development makes a lot of difference, because some countries do have an ecosystem where the product manufacturers have built their object libraries so that the design team can use it. And some countries are still not built that ecosystem where the object libraries are available directly for usage. And that may be one of the challenges and need to be addressed at the stage one to understand how to move forward. Looking into the global trends in BIM research, I do see that there are few people asking for what's happening globally in the Q&A. This is one of the research I've done in 2016. You just need to go to Google and say BIM research, you'll find the first article in there. And this was done by exploring the research and developments happening in 70 countries, and to look into what's happening, what kind of trends has happened from past 3 decades, because VDC has started 3 decades ago, and now it's moving further for BIM, and then more people want to use it as a digital twin and then use it for overall project management. And this journey is nothing but the digital transformation, which is our key topic of today. So what has happened in past 3 decades for now what we're using? Now, we are today in our scenario, we are speaking about the drones, robotic stations, and laser scanners, and also 100 to 200 softwares minimum from 20 to 25 software vendors dealing with BIM. And whatever the standards we see, there was initial organizational standards, then came in the national standards, and then came in the global standards, where we today are speaking about ISO 19650 and so on. So how these changes have come in and how this BIM is addressing different problems in the life cycle of the project. Now, this is the research which has been performed in 2016 to understand the kind of trends in all these areas and which countries have kind of development on what areas. Looking in a little bit deeper, so if you see in the Nordic countries and a little bit of US, they are more focused on software development for the BIM. And some of the countries like UK and a few other countries are more focused on the policy development or standardizing the implementation process. Some of the countries like Gulf region, they're mainly focused on implementation. They have the softwares, people, money, they bring them on board and get the projects implemented. And that level of implementation works happening. Some of the countries like India and few other developing countries, they're currently focusing on providing the BIM services to the global sector, because they have a good manpower to support this kind of services. And most of the global companies pitching for the Indian project for the support to get the modeling services, drafting and documentation, coordination jobs, and so on. And few other countries focusing on the education and event, XYZ things. So when the efforts of these sectors and also few of the researchers from different background from the design or the construction, they know what is the current problems in these phases, and they try to address that with bringing that data into the model and using it for further. This is how the BIM has been evolved from the past 3 decades. And today what we are seeing is not a completely mature BIM. There's another 5 to 10 years which would take for a complete for level 3 BIM, whatever we say as integrated BIM to happen, where all the divisions like design, construction, operation, project management, client consulting, and certification, everything happens through the cloud platforms. And all these agencies participating in the project are BIM aligned, and all of them are able to work from different locations, following the global standards. And all softwares are software, vendors are providing software as a service. For this to happen, it will take another 5 to 10 years for sure, globally, if you're looking at. And this is the way forward. And we are looking into other industries like aeronautical, mechanical, and few other industries, how they have digitally transformed, and trying to apply that for our construction sector, which was lacking a lot in terms of transformation before. And if you are interested about this, you can pitch into that article. Just Google BIM research, you'll find a detailed research where we have classified 1,000 to 2,000 research papers on these lines. And you can select the research area and you can find the research papers and also get a clarity on what is the kind of journey in different countries. Looking into the BIM adoption efforts worldwide from the public sector. And we all know this is most of the time, the transformation happens when there is a client push to the big level. And until and unless the clients are mandating, only few companies go for the transformation. And when companies, they understand the benefits and returns that they can gain from implementing BIM, then without even the push from the clients, they automatically upgrade themselves so that they get ready for be competitive in the global sector. But in the past 10 years, there's a lot of mandates coming in different countries. You know, from 2010 to 2020, if you can see, there's a lot of mandates from the client side, and also some of the state ministries mandating BIM for their procurements. And this has brought a lot of digital transformation happen in a quicker process these days. And India is not exceptional. In most of the client authorities are also mandated BIM, especially for airports, metros, some of the infra projects and smart cities, building sector, real estate. There's a lot of mandates coming in for having the better project delivery. And it will take a long way to have a complete transformation. And looking into the standards and guidelines, like if you go back the way 15 years, you will see at that time you had organizational standards, like each of these countries, if you see NIS from US, it's NIST and NIBS and Mass Port Authority, Construction Industry Council. Each of these agencies in other countries had their own standards for implementing the BIM. And today we have a global standards which is coming up, which is ISO 19650, and also other BIM standards from ISO, which will be helping you for data management, soft landings, and XYZ things. Looking into the global trends in BIM education, the most important thing for the products to be delivered with BIM, it's the education. No matter this education is happening in the academia or in the corporate. So both of these are education for the existing people to change from the current skills and competencies to the necessary skills for delivering the projects. This is another research which I performed in 2017, where I had got a clarity that more than 25 countries have the BIM in their education curriculums. It may be for an architecture, civil, mechanical, electrical, computer science, for management, real estate, law schools. And initially it was more of a single discipline learning, and then it became like multidisciplinary. And people then look into collaborating with universities in different countries, and then they bring in the real projects as a case studies to work on together, so that they understand how people from different countries can work together for in a real scenario, so that they will be get ready for the actual project implementations. I mean, currently it's with the kind of COVID coming in, even the education system is transforming very fast. There is no other way for them. Everything need to be done online. And also the BIM implementation is happening much faster pace than the previous. And also most of the tech vendors are now focusing to make their softwares as a software as a service, make it on a cloud-based solutions. And I could say for this kind of AEC industry now, with respect to that transformation, it's a good push with respect to COVID. But there are also some drawbacks if you are going into the real site implementations, and there are some issues which is currently need to be addressed. Looking into the BIM education approaches globally, so when I say about the education, which has to be a key initiative to start implementing anything, until we are educated what it is, and even the top management or the key policymakers know what is BIM, what it can bring for me in the projects, what is the investments, what is the return on investments, what kind of skills is required for the professionals. It will be very difficult for them to go further on saying that I have a level 2 BIM, level 3 BIM. It's all difficult. The first thing, the foundation is about the education. So when we say about the education, how it has been influenced in different countries. So different agencies have put in different levels of efforts in different countries. Like if you can see here, there are 5 categories. Government promoting the BIM education. It's like the government agencies itself promote the education, like in UK, USA, Hong Kong, and also in Taiwan. Like the ministries do the funding for developing a basic foundation courses, and it's open for everyone for learning. Like it's a right to learn. That kind of promotions from the government agencies getting the funding and then helping out the professionals. The second category is BIM education by policy field players. especially the educationists, researchers as a main driving factor. The high efforts are there in Norway, Brazil, medium efforts are in Australia, Israel, and so on. And trust me, this is a 3 years old research output. So maybe a little bit more efforts have been taken by other countries now. And little efforts by UAE, Nigeria, South Africa, and so on. And BIM adoption in tertiary education system, that means in the university curriculums. Bringing BIM as not as a software alone, but overall project management perspective and multidisciplinary learning, and collaborating with different countries, universities for the courses. So many universities are there with this kind of methodologies adopted in UK, USA, Finland, Ireland, Netherlands, and so on. And several universities in Denmark, Belgium, Australia, Taiwan, and few universities in China, Hong Kong, New Zealand. And BIM education related events or conferences. There are many such conferences related to education happening in UK, USA, several in Australia, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, and few in China and New Zealand. And BIM-based certification or training programs. The major thing most of the countries face is there is no properly certified programs. Someone come in, some new startups come in, and with no proper clarity on what is that BIM education need to be. They come in as a BIM as a Revit, BIM as a Navisworks, or BIM as XYZ tool, or even confuse the people with respect to what is the skills that particular discipline people need to learn. So there is a need for having a BIM-based certification and training programs, which are very much specifically aligned with what discipline I am, what kind of job role I would be playing in, and what are the different types of job roles in BIM projects. Aligned with that, there should be properly global certified programs. And these kind of programs are there, few in UK, USA, Norway, Finland, Hong Kong, New Zealand, etc. Well, in 2016, when this is my days of my research in my PhD, where I was doing my PhD in National Taiwan University on establishing organization BIM strategies. So I was thinking, like, we in India, this is a country where you call it as a BIM factory. You know, the name has come as a BIM factory. The reason is India is providing BIM services to the whole global market with respect to the basic services. And also most of the software vendors have their base foundation set in India for working on the software developments. But still, the name of India is nowhere heard much in the market in terms of the digital transformation. And the third is there's a lot of researchers from India in the global sector working on developments, but still there's no much of developments happening. And most of the time, Indian startups on BIM has evolved more of like saying that, okay, I need to provide a services to the other country projects, and then I set up a startup. You know, these were the kind of BIM startups which has evolved in the Indian sector. And way back 2 decades, they have this kind of setups and wonderful project services they are able to deliver, even now for most of the global projects. Trust me, it would be very challenging for most of the global companies to provide at the price what the Indian companies provide for the services, and also for the kind of efforts the Indian team put in. They are ready to work from day and night to develop the services and projects. And that's how the BIM foundations have been set up in India. Even though there are projects in other countries, if they reach out to the more of the global companies, they still subcontract the projects back to India because they know there is no competitive pricing for the what they can get from Indian sector. With the kind of support what the Indian market is providing for the global sector, the recognition was still low. And also the level of understanding of BIM and the transformation was very low in the Indian AEC sector, because people were thinking that it's limited to just using BIM for design or setting up the CDE or documentation or time planning and so on. With that understanding, and with very few universities providing the education in the university system, and also less implementation of BIM for construction and operation activities, BIM was meant for design at that point of time. So understanding these kind of issues, we thought we should have one national initiative to support the kind of transformation, to spread about the awareness, to bring in the certifications, to bring into the auditing and implementation support from the neutral vendor to support the clients. Because there are different tech vendors comes in and they say, okay, yes, BIM is this software, BIM is that software. Well, BIM is not software, it's a process of managing the data and building the data using several technologies and people coming in the process. So this kind of confusions need to be properly clarified to the client agencies. So we had several, include more than hundreds of sessions as an awareness, reaching out to the academia, reaching to the industry, reaching to the policymakers, reaching to the global events, to say about what is required in BIM and what is the kind of curriculums you need to develop, what kind of trainings are required, what kind of certifications, what level of strategies need to be set. That level of working we do through the national initiative. It's open forum for all the participants who look for collaboration with the Indian AEC sector and within the sector. Looking into the BIM developments, we say BIM field players, right? So how does BIM actually get implemented? It's not just by the industry people using the software. It's not just by the tech vendors providing the software solutions. It's not just by launching ISO or XYZ guidelines. There's a need of proper collaboration between the people who develop these policies, people who use these softwares and work on the real projects, which is process field, and the technology field players to come together, understand what are the ways to bring these three things together and make the implementation. And we strongly believe that when these three divisions come together, only the market level maturity comes in the picture. And looking into this concept from past 4 years, we are building the community into these four categories, for these three categories. And so that we make them realize and we bring them into collaboration with other divisions so that they can collaborate and work together. And with this kind of national initiative, we were able to bring in a lot of new startups which are supporting the services. And this is the kind of impact of having our national BIM forum in the Indian AEC sector, which supported in a big way for digital transformation. We were able to activate the tech industry, policy, academia, research industries to collaborate for digital transformation. For me, it's all about people and change management. You may have hundreds of softwares, hundreds of standards, hundreds of people ready to work. The key thing is change and making the people realize the returns, what BIM can bring for them. If people can realize that, then there is no need of push. It's all a pull factor. So people will automatically align with it and try to work on that. So for us, the key challenge is change management. For that, a lot of awareness sessions are happening. India was recognized as a BIM factory, as I said to you, and now with the awareness sessions of focus of managerial and strategic directions, building the leadership level teams who can handle the projects which is happening within India for the Indian companies. Better diffusion of BIM in the academic curriculums. Before, the universities used to think BIM is a kind of trainings that need to be provided in the corporates and nothing to do with the academia. And now, day in, day out, one or the other university come in and ask for, hey, well, I want to diffuse BIM because it's a kind of requirement for the industry now. What is the way we can adopt it in the curriculum? What is the kind of curriculum? Can you help us for certifications? And this kind of queries are coming in a big way now. Connected services providers and clients for better BIM project delivery. There are several clients who need a services, and there are several service providers who can provide the services. But the clients cannot know who is the best service provider, and the service providers know what clients need. We were able to connect these kind of levels. And there are several young population in India. I can say India's young population is the highest in the global market, which is between the 20 to 30 age group. And the major thing what they miss is the direction. So what is my direction to go forward? What is the direction for success? No, and also candidates with a research focus. So we were able to connect them with the global researchers, professors, academicians, and so that they can look in for their higher studies and research and so on. Overall, connecting the dots of the service providers and aids to mature the Indian AEC projects. And we're also way forward with our Bureau of Indian Standards to activate the national BIM standards or develop the annex for the ISO, these kind of things, and also certifications. And this is the importance of national BIM forums. I can see that day in, day out, there are new forums coming in. I can see at least 30 plus countries have their own national forums now. Just 2 days ago, we had a BIM forum Brazil discussions, and recently UAE BIM forum got formed, Nepal BIM forum got formed. So different countries are taking up a national initiatives, because whatever you have, building smart and other things is more of a neutral agencies, standardization. But what need is a change management. It's a voice of community that need to be built. And that can only happen through such national forums. And in coming days, we're also working on the global forum initiatives, where we can bring in all the forums and come together to support each other in terms of developments and growth. And when you have such forums, it works as a common and neutral platform for tech, policy, and process field players to collaborate and plan initiatives supporting digital transformation. And India is a large scale of young population, as I said, directing them towards the right path was performed through a lot of awareness sessions, and day in, day out, these things are happening. We share them what is the latest development trends in the global sector so that they get aligned with what's happening globally. As a national society, we had activated the BIM diffusion through the first we focus on a bottom-up approach by spreading the awareness 4 years ago. And then we, after 1.5 2 years, we worked on a top-down approach, influencing the clients and policymakers. And currently we're working on a middle-out approach for the industries. This is a kind we are currently working on the national initiative. We were able to create a community of professionals of BIM consultants who can support the organizations with trainings, events, audits, certifications, and BIM services at a neutral level, rather than saying I'm part of a company. This is an NGO. So it works more of a neutral body, which will be able to be more trustworthy for the client side. Looking at the BIM, the initiative, several other forums were initiated on the same lines, and the kind of coming into the global transformation, it's all about people management and the change management, which is a key focus which all of us need to have. And these are some of the issues what our India has faced for adopting BIM in the sector. This is a research which I've done in 2017. Well, this is the researches which I've done in 2016, 17, 18, but now we are working on that. So we did the research and now we are trying to address them day in, day out. So we had got the responses from all these sectors, all these regions, wherever you see here the names. The experts here were connected and we were asking them for understanding what are the key concerns with respect to BIM adoption in industry and also with respect to BIM adoption in academia. Reach to both professionals and the academic experts. Then with a proper dedicated research done, we got a clarity that these are the actual problems which our industry and academia is facing. And we have categorized them under 9 subheadings, if you see. For the industry, the blue one, the first one is technical barriers. The softwares are expensive, right? But there are also softwares which are free. And there are also softwares which are open source. And there are also softwares which are neutral. So understanding that itself is one key important strategy. Hardware requirements, it keeps changing as the more and more configuration coming. As technology is not, I cannot say that it's already developed or it will stop developing after a few years because it keeps changing and the hardware requirements also keep changing. Standard guidelines, which is missing in our country yet, and we are now anyhow focusing on the global standards and also working on the standardizing it for Indian AECO sector. The major thing is a people barriers, client-driven limitations. Until the client asks for that, we don't want to go for it. Only few companies go with it without even client asking because they know the benefits of adopting it. Less importance towards BIM adoption from other team members. Okay, for example, a design organization is ready to adopt it. Maybe contractor organization not ready to go with it. If an architectural team is ready to adopt it, maybe structural team not ready to adopt it. If the client has mandated it, some divisions are not adopting. These kind of issues, that comes in because people are not able to understand the returns, what BIM can bring in for them. Lack of talented workforce to operate BIM softwares. There are a set of softwares which is commonly used from Autodesk or Bentley or a few other technologies. But still, when you know that talented workforce comes in with a extra added cost for it. And when they are getting paid more in the other countries, obviously they like to switch for other countries. And education and training barriers. Absence of BIM education and training in the academia. But initially it was focusing more on a BIM as a software learning in the universities. Now they're changing. Skill issues. These again are skill issues within the professors who are teaching the latest trends. Because many of the time, some of the universities professors gets outdated. They don't get changed with the latest trends happening. So skill issues happens. Organizational efforts are very less. Some institutes are driven by politicians. Some institutes are driven by the key governments. So it depends on the level of drive it happens. Legal barriers. liability and copyright issues, because some team develops an objects, some people develops a BIM model to some LOD, or some people keep updating the data onto the model during the construction. People feel that I own this data or I own this model. Understanding and having that into the contractuals is very much important. National building codes, which were missing, third-party dependence for accuracy of BIM models. I may need to depend on the design team about what they're giving, and then if I start constructing something error come in, then I cannot have a blame game. Work practice and process related barriers. Roles and responsibilities are not clearly defined even today. There are new job roles coming in. Sometimes BIM coordinators are called BIM managers are called as BIM coordinators, and different job roles are mixed together for each of these job roles, and also for modelers. Someone from civil come and start doing the architectural model. There's a difference in understanding what is the roles and responsibilities of a different discipline people come in. Change in practice and use of information, inefficient regulatory, commercial barriers like insurance, capital for investments. Because first, if I say go with BIM for any organization, first is what is the investment? What is the percentage of the project I need to put in for investment for BIM? This is the first question for any investor. But if you're not able to address that properly, then what is the returns that you're going to get after investing? It becomes a little bit challenging for bringing in the BIM for the projects or the organization. Key adopters of BIM, which are the design teams, will not get immediate benefits by doing that effort. As you know, the efforts are more for the design phase and becomes lesser as you go on from construction to operation. But the benefits are totally reverse. The operation teams get some more benefits, and the construction team and then the design team. There should be some properly aligning this. Maybe IPD can help on that. In academia, we have three sector people who need to address these problems. Policy field players, which are to process of introducing BIM in the AEC curriculum, resolving key issues in delivering BIM in the curriculum, initiating producing trained BIM personnel. It's about faculty development programs, and then training bringing in the industry experts for the trainings. Technology field players, need of BIM IT laboratory facilities. Many of the universities do not have these IT laboratory facilities. It has to be set up, and it can only be set up by collaboration with different tech vendors. But what happens is, if there is XYZ university, for example, XYZ tech vendor comes and say, I want to sponsor for your IT laboratory facility, but make sure that you will not sign a contract with another tech vendor. This becomes very challenging for the university to go in a neutral way and making the students realize what is BIM actually. Need of BIM technical officers, need of standards of guidelines for BIM tool selections, process related problems, which is industry people need to solve, need for revising existing incomplete BIM curriculums. Well, the industry people need to give a clarity, like this is what I need the skilled professionals once the students become a BIM ready graduate, these are the skills I need from them. Then accordingly, the curriculum can be revised. An initiative to reduce the weak ties between industry and academia. As I know, there's a lot of weak ties between industry and academia. It has to be worked out very well, understanding the client requirements. Teaching BIM as both technology and process in university is a key requirement. And as I said, we do hundreds of sessions reaching out to different locations. Before it was a little bit challenging, every day it will be difficult for you to travel and then present for hundreds of people and come back. With this COVID, these awareness sessions have become easy, and sitting at the home, you can reach to hundreds of people. And no matter, on the same day, you can do 3-4 sessions. It has become much easier for spreading BIM in this time for our initiative. And we're able to reach, and many other initiatives are able to reach us, so that we're able to share our interests and their interests. Looking into the BIM jobs category, there are 3 categories, my understanding: technical, managerial, and strategic with respect to BIM. When I say technical, these are the kind of skilled professionals who can work on the BIM softwares, which may be across the life cycle. Someone use BIM software for modeling, some for planning, some for estimation, some for coordination, some for tracking and monitoring, some for safety, quality. No, you will be using more than 20 softwares in the life cycle of the project to implement BIM thoroughly. So these people who can work on that software and develop the data into the model, they are like technical people. And the managerial people, these people are main focus like design manager, construction managers, facility managers, project managers. Their main job role is to make sure the client requirements, deadlines, deliverables, standard way of implementing, coordination between the technical people, make this all align and make sure what client is expecting is getting delivered as per the requirements. The strategic people. So these are the people who should be leading the team within an organization, within a project, within the market. So they should be able to drive the transformation, say that, hey, look, in this project, there's a kind of client requirements in the RFP. These are kind of BEP that need to be developed. These are the kind of job roles for each of us. These are the deliverables and so on, so dates. Strategically aligning the project, that we call it as a project BIM strategy. Then organizational transformation strategist. So these are the people who would look into the global organizations, what is their trends and way forward, and align our organization accordingly, setting up the roadmaps, quarterly plans, and then investments, and looking into what technologies, what equipments, what trends are coming in, what kind of skill development programs need to be generated, how can we reach to the vision what we have planned for the next 3 to 5 years. Looking into these kind of works. Market level, it's more of a leadership level where they can look into the other countries, how they are evolving with respect to policies, initiatives, education, implementations, and try to drive that in their own country so that the transformation happens. So in fact, any BIM specialist or a digital transformation specialist will be aligned in one of these job roles. And it's important to know what kind of skills and competencies we need for each of these areas. And looking into the Indian AEC sector, technical, we have plenty of them. The supply has become more than the demand for technical job roles because India is a country which serves as a BIM factory for the global market. So there are a number of technical people who can work for very cheaper, maybe 1/10 or 1/20th of the labor cost of what happens in other countries. So that way the team has developed in a very big level here on the technical. Managerial, there are few set of people. Once you become technical, you grow for 5 to 10 years. They want a better job because they pitch in for other countries and then they come back. These kind of people are almost able to reach the supply and demand now at this point. Strategic, the supply is very, very low and the demand is very high because the transformation is happening. And most of the clients are mandating. That means all the organizations in the AECO sector need to transform. So they need to set up their strategies for the way forward. But the leadership level drive people are very, very few who understand BIM at a higher level rather than just limiting BIM as a software. So this is a kind of supply and demand within the Indian AEC sector with respect to this jobs category. Well, this is a short presentation from my side. We're open for discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your information. It's very useful indeed. And I think your presentation has already answered half of the questions that we got today. We've got about 10 minutes left. So let's say we start with the questions one right now because we have so many questions from our audience today. Very successful indeed. So the first one, in terms of like Thailand, I think we definitely would like to know that if we would like to implement BIM, because some of the, let's say in the operation level or even manager level, they don't have a very specific policies or any specific objective, but we know that we have to move on. So what would you guys actually suggest how can we actually start implementing BIM in our organizations?
Yeah, I'm happy to make a start of answering that. I guess along the themes of my presentation, a lot of it depends on the nature of your business. So to answer that for an asset owner operator, as I said, a lot of focus is in new projects, new assets, but one of the key places to start is to speak with the asset maintenance teams and try and create engagement alignment with those procuring and delivering major projects. Also, in terms of implementing new ways of working, so if you're in the supply chain, looking at design management, then the tools, the skills you may already have may dictate where you start and build on the capability you already have. I think another key thing is to also start with demystifying it. So what is BIM for your organization, and get a consensus. So what I mean by that is don't make it complex and technical necessarily. So a lot of a lot of business leaders understand the needs of their business in terms of reporting, key decisions. And I think framing it as managing information and data helps with those conversations, rather than, you know, jumping straight to the complexity of things like 3D models with data embedded. That perhaps won't relate so much, but talking about the outcomes, how that supports, you know, greater certainty and reporting and things like this. So.
Okay, thank you so much, Will. I was like left the session for a few seconds. All right, I'm coming back now. So how about in terms of if you guys can share about the challenging and the barrier that happens for the past few years in Australia and also in Dubai and in India. Aaron?
Yeah. So for India, I've already given a brief in the presentation itself, what are the challenges we face. But to add on for this, the first thing is when you say you want to go with BIM, there are already in the top management in the companies usually with the traditional approach. But you know, they will say, without going with this, we are able to do the projects. Why should I go with it? It's about change management, but that's the key concern when you want to bring into the changes. But once you make them realize what is the kind of benefits that can get added to the projects, once you develop the model, using it for different activities in the life cycle, and how you can use the digital twin for operations, so then they will get a clarity and they start implementing. So especially the companies, the key thing is time, cost, quality. These three things, if you can address with this, it'll be more.
Thank you. Because in Thailand, I think we have been implementing BIM for some times. However, it's still quite early for us comparing to you guys. So that's we have a lot of the question that how could we start? Because sometimes our management or the policy guy doesn't actually fully understand about that yet. And getting back to what we recommend, it seems like our asset manager seems to be the last one who actually moved on into the digital transformation at the moment in Thailand. Okay, so let's move to the next question. In Thailand, we're still doing a lot of design build in our architectural design and construction field. So we have a lot of problem in collaboration between designers and also with the construction team. Would you have any recommendation on that? And also, we don't really have a lot of EIR, like order request or a clear idea from the owner at the moment. What would you like to suggest for us to start with?
I can make a quick comment on that. We see that in the regions and countries we operate in all the time, and where you've got a more staged and perhaps fragmented procurement process, there's real importance on at least having a clear plan for the work you're going to undertake. So if you're just looking at design, so if a contractor engages and design's already been developed, the contractor would be looking for a clear plan and understanding as to how did this information and design get developed. You know, what's the nature and the structure of the information and data? What were the decisions made? So even if it's not as, you know, a lot of engagement up front, making sure, you know, say you've got clarity there. One experience I had when I was client side at Transport for London, one of the best submissions when we were reviewing tenders through the procurement process was where the tier one supplier had actually had an attempt at writing an EIR for the client. Which was amazing because it showed
it's happening here as well, all around the world.
Yeah, so I think that's a positive thing because it starts that dialogue and awareness between the supply chain and the asset owner operators, and it shows that level of understanding, interest, and appetite from the supply chain as well. So if there isn't any IR, don't worry. Do your best to say this is what we believe your information requirements are, and then start that dialogue with the client.
Yeah, that's what we believe and we're trying to do at the moment as well. Okay, for the next question, it's actually coming from myself. Regarding, because we also working on transportation in New South Wales as well. So let's answer the question that is there any opportunity that we can work among the region? Yes, definitely, because my firm is based in Bangkok and we work on the project in New South Wales, Australia. But we also realized that we have to work on the Uniclass 2015. And can you actually giving us the idea of like why we think the Uniclass might be a good classification that maybe in Thailand we should be adopting it, or maybe because Thailand never have any formal classification, so that is something very hard for us. But how would you suggest that if we want to implement that, would it be hard, or should we follow the Uniclass 2015?
I think I can take that. I think
Thank you, Sean.
I think one of the benefits to Uniclass 2015, if you were to adopt it, is it's matured already. It's been through a number of iterations. So 2015 is the latest release. And I would suggest that it encompasses a lot of different scenarios that have already been experienced in the UK. So rather than reinvent the wheel, I think that is the main positive reason to adopt an existing standard. Yeah. And the fact that it's maintained currently by a reputable organization helps firm up the idea that it will be continued to be used and it will be continued to be relevant. How you would implement that is it's one of two ways. Either it's your own internal organization is something that is positive about it and believes it should be implemented as part of their business as usual, or it's driven from the top down. It's a government requirement, or it's a municipality or a private client requirement. That's generally how it would be implemented. So in the UK, it's a government requirement for publicly procured projects. So that's how the supply chain is required to implement it. Mm-hmm. So okay. There's a number of different ways it could be implemented.
Thank you, Sean. And how about what's happening in India, Dr. Amarnath?
Okay. So as I said, we, the country, provide the services to the global market. We follow all the standards, Uniclass, Omniform, and so it depends on the client requirements, they follow the kind of classification. Even in the terms of standards, before the ISO coming, though they used to use the different standards from different countries, mix and match whichever they want for the Indian sector. And also the templates for BEPs, everything are developed on this. We don't have a particular classification system, but we follow most of the ones which are available.
Okay. And what do you guys find that is the most challenging or the barrier in terms of implementation, BIM implementation or digital transformation in our profession?
Maybe Aaron, you might want to touch on some of the work you do with clients around helping them understand the way they work, and that's the barrier. That's something that.
Yeah, so I think in Kesinee, you mentioned that the running joke that at the moment the biggest cause for digital transformation for a lot of organizations was the pandemic. What we're actually seeing is we're going to see a big gap separation between those that were accelerated and actually moved into digital transformation and those that stay behind with legacy processes. And that gap's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So one of the future issues we're going to run into is traditional partners and traditional collaborations are going to be stressed by partners who haven't moved at the same speed as their collaborative partner. So those that have moved onto digital systems, those that are actually streamlined and use a more digitally transformed way of working, it might not be the leading practice, but it is moved heavily forward, are going to be stressed trying to work with other entities and organizations that yet haven't made the movement or didn't find the need. And so probably the important thing to look at now is now's the time to put in the effort to actually move into that and get on top. And if you actually stay behind, you're going to be very, very much left behind with the new way of working. So it's almost ride the wave of change that's happening now.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's going to be a very good topic for our Thailand BIM Association as well. Thank you very much for your time for today, everyone. It's Sunday, and hopefully you're going to have a good day on Sunday and take a good race. We still have more time. Hopefully you guys, like, it's pretty late in the afternoon right now. So thank you so much, and thank you Impact for having us to talk on the digital transformation session today. Thank you everyone. ขอบคุณมากค่ะ
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.